These apple crumble bars are about to become your new fall favorite dessert. Let me show you how to make them. I'm using 6 medium apples for this recipe. Peel your apples and then cut them into small chunks. I like to cut the cheeks off of my apples because it gives me a nice solid base to cut the chunks out of. They don't have to be perfectly even. I quite like when they're mismatched because it gives you different textures. I like to use a tart apple, something like a Granny Smith or a Crispin, because it really does lend the flavor really well to these bars. If you use a sweeter apple, you'll have to cut down the sugar and you won't get that lovely tartness when you bite into it. It really helps balance the flavors. And mine are a little bit brown looking because they're organic and came off the tree in the garden. Put your apple pieces into a medium to large pot. To the apples, add 90 milliliters, 6 tablespoons of water, and 15 milliliters, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. Turn this to medium-high and let it start to simmer. I like to give it a stir every now and again while it's cooking so that the apples on the top have enough time to cook as well as the apples on the bottom. Once the apples are starting to soften, like this, it's time to add in your seasonings. I'm adding in 2 teaspoons, 10 grams of cinnamon, and you could just stop with the seasoning there, but I'm going to go a little bit further and add in 5 grams, 1 teaspoon of mixed spice. You could also use nutmeg or ginger, and a pinch of vanilla salt. Give that a mix to coat all of the apples. If you find your water has completely evaporated from the bottom, you can add in a few more tablespoons. You don't want the apples to burn. Now add in 2/3 a cup or 140 grams of brown sugar. You could also use white sugar, but the brown sugar adds a caramelly flavor. And I'd say if you're trying to reduce your sugar content, you can probably cut this down to about half a cup, around 95 grams. Turn this down to medium or medium-low if your stove runs really hot. And let that simmer for a few more minutes until your apples are fork tender. Your apples should look like this. You can see how easily the fork goes into it. Remove it from the heat, and then we need to thicken it. You'll need 8 teaspoons or 20 grams of cornflour or cornstarch. Then add in 4 tablespoons, 60 milliliters of water. I like to use a fork to stir this. I find it helps with any little lumps. And using cold water is actually really important here because if you use hot water, the cornstarch won't dissolve properly. That's why we're not adding this directly to the filling. You'll be able to feel when it's fully dissolved. Add your slurry to the apple mix and give it a good stir. As it cools, it will continue to thicken. At this point, you could freeze this and use it as pie filling, or it's even delicious over oatmeal or ice cream. Line your tray with butter and parchment paper. The butter isn't always necessary, but it is a nice extra precaution so that nothing sticks. I'm baking this in a 9 by 13 inch or 20 by 30 centimeter pan. To line my pan, I like to make my parchment slightly larger and then cut slits on each edge of the pan, right where it ends. That way it just slides right into the pan and you can just fold the edges so that it fits perfectly, like this. I then tuck the shorter edges on the inside. One perfectly lined pan. Preheat your oven to 170 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit. To a large bowl, add 1.5 cups or 339 grams of butter. It doesn't matter if your butter is not room temperature. If you've just pulled it from the fridge, you can easily just grate it through a box grater and it will have the same effect. Then add in 3 cups or 360 grams of plain or all-purpose flour. I'm just going to use my hands and rub that together. Of course, you can do this with a pastry cutter, you can do it in a mixer or with a hand mixer or even a wooden spoon, but I find my hands the best tool for the job. And when it's mostly mixed and looks something like this, we'll add in the rest of our ingredients. Add in 1.5 cups or 150 grams of quick cook or traditional oats. Then add in 3/4 cups or 75 grams of brown sugar, 75 grams or 3/4 cups of white sugar, 1.5 teaspoons, 6 grams of cinnamon, and because we added it to the apples, I'm adding in about 1/2 teaspoon of mixed spice. Again, optional. Add in 3/4 teaspoons or 3 grams of salt. I'm using my vanilla salt. If you'd like to make your own vanilla salt, I've linked my video recipe in the description below. And 1.5 teaspoons, 6 grams of baking powder. Let's mix that all together. Once it's all mixed up and you have a bit of a crumbly dough, you're going to remove 1/3 of this mixture. This is going to become the topping for our crumble bars. Then with what's left in here, you're going to add in 2 eggs. and then mix it all together. Once it looks like this, you're ready to pop it in your pan. Pour the mixture into the pan. I've switched to a spatula so that I don't lose out on any of that filling. And then spread it along the bottom, as evenly as possible. It's going to look like you don't have enough. Trust me, you do. The baking powder is going to help this mixture to rise up, and it will have a nice, lovely layer once it's baked. Pour your apple mixture over the top, and then spread that out to the edges. Now, using the remaining third of the mixture that we made earlier, crumble that all over the top. Just break it up in your fingers and allow it to drop on top of the apples. I always start with a bit of a conservative layer, and then I go in and I add more later on. And make sure you're getting right to the edges as well. And into the oven. These will need to bake for 25 to 30 minutes or until the top starts to get brown and you've got bubbling around the edges. You can see there's just a little bit of bubbling around the edges, and the baking powder has done its job because the crumble topping has puffed up. You'll want to let this cool completely in the pan so none of the apple filling runs out. Slice into 24 bars. That's 6 down and 4 across. I feel that this is the perfect portion for each bar. And since we're in autumn and you might just be overrun with blackberries, why not try my blackberry crumble bars? Or mix the blackberries in with the apple filling. That would be delicious. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.